We're very tempted to start because the room is practically full and we've got a very full program. So we thought we'd get going. And if there are any people who slip in to stand around the edges, that's all right. Is that okay with you? Yeah. Lovely. So we've got 6 people speaking, and we're going to try and be very disciplined, which is really hard when you're passionate about your subject. And then we'll have a space for questions. And when we get to the space for questions, at every official place, except the tables in the middle, there are mics, and they have switches underneath the counter. So please make sure that when you're moving around, you don't knee one of them while we're talking and make a noise that is projected by mistake. When we get to the questions, then we can use them consciously if we need to. But the tech guy says, this room has been well designed and the sound works well. So hopefully we won't need too much extra backup of tech. But we are recording it. There's the ORFC little recorder that all the sessions are recorded. And then we've got my colleague Shahara from the Biodynamic Association who is also recording it so that we can use the subject matter again because it's such an interesting subject. I tried to get ORFC to do this last year, but they had so many things to put into the program, and I didn't have a well-formed proposal. This year, I had already put together a program around water that we did for groundswell, and then we've modified it and improved it and increased it so that we have it here. So it's a really interesting proposal, and it got taken up. So that's always the challenge with Oxford, making a proposal sound interesting, because there's so many interesting things that come forward. So water. Water is really important in our life. And we have specialists here. We have Simon from Ebb and Flow. We have Patrick Holden, who is a farmer as well as the Sustainable Food Trust and has been working with the Global Farm Metric and what it's important for farmers to do with water. We have Nigel Akehurst, who is working with the Pevensey cluster around the water situation there. And it's an example of farm clusters working with water. So it's really important to see what can be done. We have Dan Turner from the Rivers Trust, and the Rivers Trust works regionally and nationally, and it's really important that we support their work. I would have loved to have somebody from Lee Day who are working with the USC and Y pollution questions, but that was too big to fit it into this. And we've got 8 minutes each, basically, so that we give time at the end for some questions. And then we've got Minnie Jane, who is from the Flow Partnership, who works in the UK and across the world with water questions with her organization, which is an NGO, and she's a key part of that. So, being maybe not the specialist that all the others are, I'm starting. So, one of the most important elements of caring for water is how our soil is. Soil can absorb, soil can filter, soil can also just let the water go with organic, chemical, or soil particle bits into rivers, into streams, onto roads, and this can be disastrous. So who works with soil has great power over what happens with water in our country. And soil is so important to agriculture, as we all know. And the whole regenerative movement of agriculture came out of soil depletion, soil destruction. When soil becomes purely mineral, as I'm sure you all know, it can't absorb anything. It just compacts, the water puddles, And this is what happens.
Hi guys, okay. Another example of devastating effects that burning can have. This is no-till field. I shared some pictures on the no-till group, biological group earlier on. This is organic water.
So this is his neighbour's field.
Zero infiltration at all. Interesting thing is,
It's in Zimbabwe.
where it comes out of the burnt area into the no-till area, or where it disappears. Nothing else flowing off.
So this is fantastic. It comes onto his land and it just goes down in. And it's not like he is doing anything magic except regenerative farming. He's caring for his soil, whereas his neighbour isn't. And it makes such a difference. So, slowing the flow, allowing the water to run in, this is so important for water. Not only does it help against flooding, but it also helps against drought because the water is there in the deeper levels of the soil. And that is so important. But how do we keep the water there? How do we work with the land so that we are enabling it to store water? So it doesn't do this. This is when you've got major machinery, major chemicals, and also this happens in urban areas where we are putting down tiles, tarmac, covering every little bit because we want to put our car in our front garden instead of having flowers because the street has become so congested, or whatever. So the whole of our country is increasingly impervious to water. 94% of our farms are using large amounts of chemicals, so-called conventional farming. And this is what happens so quickly. Obviously, the regenerative movement is growing, the organic and the biodynamic is growing, but it's still no competition for those farms that are desperate to have an assured income and use what they know or think they know will assure an income. It's a desperate situation because most farmers would rather not use large amounts of chemicals, but they feel they have to be able to assure their own viability, pay their debts, and meet the needs of their family. So what are some others doing? They're saying, okay, I've got a farm. I can manage to redirect that stream, allow it to become more what it was before the Victorians started going in and managing everything so that streams became straight. So this is a chalk stream that a colleague who talked with us in Groundswell talked about, and they have opened it up and allowed it to flood, allowed it to meander again, and it's beautiful what they're doing. And this can be done everywhere. But are we feeling free to allow some of our precious production land be taken over by water? It's a very big question for many of our farms. So can we make where we work with the soil more directly become more viable? So Claire was talking about the dung beetle this morning, taking some of the manure as much as 2 meters down. This is fantastic. This allows water as well. And then the biodynamic preparations, they work also with soil structure. They bring bacteria and fungi that work with what's already in the soil, and they really enable that life to live in the soil so that the soil can structure itself, can be porous, can allow the water to come in, can allow the organic matter to settle into the land, and the land turns darker. When the Biodynamic Land Trust, which is the organising host for this session, when we took on the land in Dartington that is now the Apricot Centre Farm, that land was grey clay. it grew a very, very poor level of weeds when it was not cultivated while it was in transition from Dartington to ourselves. It was desperate. It was really just mud, and not even porous mud. By putting the biodynamic preparations on, within 3 years, that turned from grey to yellowy red, to dark red, and to brown. And now it's the most beautiful brown soil. And so the preparations were bringing oxygen, turning the iron from ferrous to ferric, and making the colour of the soil change. And then the increasing organic matter made that darker and darker. So this is something that can be done, and the biodynamic preparations really help. And I'll just take you through that quickly, because these biodynamic preparations are a gift. They gift to any form of farming, whether it's regenerative, organic, or using chemicals as well. They will still work. Obviously, if you're putting in fungicides, there's not much point in bringing live fungi in the preparations, because then you're working against it. But these preparations actually do bring a lot. And they enhance the microbiome in the soil. This has been shown by some research done by Kassel University, working with farms in France and in Germany. Each one had a biodynamic and an organic partner. And this is some of the tables that have come out of that, showing that with the biodynamic preparations, there is increased harvest, there is increased resilience, there is increased good hormones, increased good bacteria, and the crop is more healthy and more abundant. And this has taken some really, really fine analysis, laboratory analysis, to be able to show all these differences. And it's a study that's been done over 5 years with 21 farms in France and 4 big farms with market gardens in Germany. And there was one big market garden farm in Germany which was on prime A1 soil, and it showed hardly any difference between the organic farm on the one side and the biodynamic one on the other. And the researchers were scratching their minds saying, what on earth is happening? Why is it not showing like all the others? And in the end, they realized that when you bring healthy bacteria and fungi, when you bring healthy impulses, which the biodynamic preparations do, if it's not needed, the soil doesn't take it up. The soil bacteria, the soil biome, they don't take it up because they've already got what they need to be in good balance. So that is what was shown. I haven't put that slide on. There was too much material for today. But I just wanted to mention that they help where help is needed. This is a slide about some research done at Padua University, showing the progression of bacteria and fungi in the manure in the cow horn when it's buried 180 days over winter. And what it shows is you have ordinary cow manure going in, you've got an ordinary horn, you put them together, you put them in. Nothing strange there. And the bacteria and so on that show up show that it's not particularly balanced, but it's healthy. But they dug several of the trials up, once at 40 days, once at 85 days, and then again, the main collection of them. This was done with metabarcoding, and what they found at the end was not related to the environmental soil, but was a perfect activator for good soil life. So it's just the horn played a part because keratin in the horn was interacting with the manure in it. And I just wanted to let you know that research is there, and it shows that with the help of good bacteria, good fungi, you can help your soil, and biodynamics helps you with that. So this is really about encouraging good care of the soil, love of the soil, and that this is something we can all do. We can all care for our soil, however small, however big, and enable it to take in carbon, enable it to structure itself with good bacteria and good fungi. And now I'll pass over to Simon, who works with Ebb and Flow and the Water Foundation and is a specialist on water itself. Oh, and Simon, you want the mic? Oops.
Can you hear me without the mic?
Yeah, no, this is the mic for Shahara for recording.
Very good. Okay. Then you can get it off again. Good morning. Yes, well, thank you very much, Gabriel. I have been working 30 years or so with Ebb and Flow, doing practical things with water in the environment, mainly in gardens or on farms. And I'm also working, as Gabriel said, with the Foundation for Water, which is a new charitable trust set up to promote education with water and research with water. The education with water, which I love to do, is to let the water educate us. So it's not finding out about water, but it is getting to know water, the nature of water. Now, before I share with you some of the things which we've done with Ebb and Flow in farms and practical solutions, working with dirty water particularly, but I don't mind, I can work with clean water, I'm not too fussy. I would like to explore with you this water is life. In what ways is water life? Water's relationship to life. It's my own interest and research, and it's not going to be a theoretical presentation. I'm presenting some phenomenology of water, which I hope you'll find interesting. So this is in Norway, and it's just a picture of the reflection from a river surface showing an organic form.
Can you all hear?
No. Sorry, that was from a river in Norway showing an organic form in the surface. Now, Leonardo da Vinci was the first one that I know of who was to say, water is the lifeblood of the earth. And this is a picture by Leonardo. And what I find fascinating with this picture is that he hasn't drawn the way the water looks. His pen has moved with the water, and the spirals of the eddies are the paths of the movement. And there are also little ring donuts here in the center. Take note of that because I'll show some more phenomena later on which relate to that. But he was obviously getting into the water in a way with his artistic work in order to understand it. And really that's what I feel we need to consider and continue now. So hopefully this will run. This is a tray of thickened water, and my colleague is just going to draw a little stick through the middle of it. It's marked with a fine dust on the surface, but you can see the eddies and also a sort of welling. It's interesting, and the rhythm, of course. The rhythm is the strongest thing which emerges out of just a single straight movement in thickened water. Now, this is a river in Ireland, and I don't know whether you can see a rhythmic play in this as well. You can see the water welling up. You can see every now and then you can see an eddying, a spiraling in. Okay, this is a little experiment created by a friend of mine, Dr. Philip Kilner, and it's just a continual flow of water with a mica dust in it. The water in itself reveals living qualities, living life-forming qualities, And I've never been able to reproduce this. I have to say, whenever I do something like this, I get an asymmetric weaving, but he's got this symmetrical movement. And it's interesting, Philip Kilner has worked with the flow of blood in the heart, and somehow it naturally came out like a heart pulse when he did the experiment. Yeah. These are pictures from a book by Theodor Schwenk, who was the first sort of phenomenologist of water, probably since Leonardo. He wrote this book in the 1960s, but it's the same as the experiment that I showed. We begin drawing a stick through thickened water, revealing these forms. Actually, this one is one of mine.
Yeah, you have to keep it moving, Tom.
Now, there's some work some of you may be aware of Masaru Emoto and most recently Veda Austin, which is freezing water and revealing different formative tendencies in this. Now, this is me freezing a very thin layer of water on a big stainless steel dish. And we have these life forms again, grass-like forms. And what I want to draw your attention to is that these curves are made up of the movements of straight lines. So straight lines are, in a way, directions. So we have in here something where the directions are changing in the forming of the crystals. Sorry, I'll just stop there. You see ice forming ferns on windscreens and also on window panes. We used to see it a lot before we had double glazing. But it's always that these curving forms, these life forms, arise in ice when it's at a surface. They won't arise when ice forms out of the atmosphere, and they won't arise when ice forms within the body of a water body, only on the surface. So now this is our work, working with water in the environment. This is actually on a farm taking liquid manure. And we're working with flow-form water sculptures, which are sort of resonant cavities for water flow. So the water gets into a swing and it's changing the surface, the air-water surface all the time. And it's also playing with a welling up and a spiraling in. So as with the river itself, within the flow form, we've sort of intensified this rhythmic play between expansive gestures and contractive gestures. I think there's the muck cart. It's taking liquid manure and also runoff from the muck. And that farmer, sadly, has since died, but he originally had the farmyard runoff running over a field, and in the end we treated it like this, and then we distributed it over the field evenly, and he said he could keep his cattle in there 3 times as long afterwards. But the aerated liquid manure is immediately can be taken up by an aerobic soil, whereas normally liquid manure goes anaerobic, it's sour, and the soil goes to begin with before air can get into it. So aeration of liquid...
2 minutes left.
Good. So this has been our work for quite a while, and doing pond and wetland systems. And we've recreated, in a way, using flow forms, a small river ecology here. So we circulate the water within the primary treatment pond, and it's got marginal plants all around, just as a slow-moving river will have a whole mix of marginal plants. And then it can be going through a bactericidal area, and you can knock the bacterial levels right down, and then into a polishing pond. That's what it will look like. There's a cascade here. That's another of the flowform cascades. Now this may or may not run. No, it didn't run. Yeah, this is another treatment pond. When you have these flowforms in cascade, you get an interaction and the rhythms play, which is so something quite musical about this rhythmic work with water. And this video would have shown you how the rhythms play. So a colleague in France has developed this form, the vortex form, which is used a lot with compostees and with conditioning water for many uses. Will that run? No, that also won't run.
But we move on.
Okay. You can see here this swinging movement that happens in the flow forms and this turnover. One of the aspects which I think is most important, but I'm not able to really explore it at the moment, is the sensitivity of water, which, as I say, seems to be in the surface. And I will be exploring that tomorrow in the Subtle Agroecologies Forum. So I will give another presentation there.
What time?
It's at the same time, 11 o'clock tomorrow.
Which room?
It is in... No, I'm sorry, I've forgotten. I hope I'll remember before tomorrow.
Simon.
Okay, and this just, if it ran... Oh, it does, yes. A little hint of the sensitivity in water. It's just a grass touching the surface.
Thank you very much, Simon. That's fantastic. Patrick, over to you. He's only got one slide.
So do I need to speak in this as well?
Not necessarily. The sound is working quite well. So
Okay.
as long as you've got your little one.
Okay. I suppose what I want to share is my... there's a gap between knowledge that you read about, or indeed when I was at Emerson, which is more than 50 years ago, there was part of the Emerson course which was to do with flow forms and water. And there's so much of what Rudolf Steiner brought and what the biodynamic movement have brought into the world, and this mysterious understanding of water, which I think I read about, but I didn't really take in. And it's taken me 50 years and more to sort of, I feel as if I'm just at the beginning of a more deep understanding of the mystery and of water. And I was in a session yesterday, listening to the land thing, when I came into the meeting. Some people here were probably in it, and Guy Hayward, who's the founder of the British Pilgrimage Trust, was in the session, and he made a reference to a river pilgrimage that we had undertaken about 3 years ago at the River Arun, which is the river, the water of our farm, which is in West Wales, goes to a watershed, which is the Arun River. And we did a river walk over 2 days. It's a 26-mile river. We started by swimming in the lake, which is the source of it, which was crystal clear and amazing and beautiful. And then we walked the whole river. And as we walked down the river, you could see that through a combination of septic tanks and sewage and farming, the river was increasingly polluted until when we got near the end of the river, which used to be a salmon river, a sea trout river, and an amazing source of life. It's now a dead river. We wouldn't really have wanted to swim in it. Although we heard it in another session later on rivers, which one of the women who spoke was from Bristol, and she regularly swims in the Avon and doesn't get sick, which is a miracle, really. But I suppose what I'm trying to say is that experience and knowledge are different, and I feel as if I learned a lot just by walking this river, and then I've reflected on my own relationship with water, because I think that what Guy Hayward also said yesterday is that I had said apparently somewhere that the farm is, in a way, what happens on farms is that the water that we have, that we drink, that is our lives, is the farms are the source either of badness or of goodness, with water everywhere. So if we are farming, we are absolutely at the center of the discussion about the future of water quality, both at a physical but also on a spiritual level. And so the other influence on me, another family influence, was my grandfather, who was a dowser. He was a clergyman and a missionary, but he found he had this gift and he could douse water. And he worked in India a lot of his life, and he found he could draw a sketch map of the field where he was with the Indian farmers, and with a pencil work out where the water was, basically because he was lazy and he wanted to get there more quickly. So he drew a sketch map, and then he developed this, and he was interviewed on Woman's Hour just before he died in the 70s, and he was asked about this gift, and he said, most people have this sort of latent gift in them, and it's like a muscle, and he just developed it. By the end of his life, he could find out from a map, he could find where the water was, how deep it was, the gallons per hour, and the quality of it. And he did this through some power that he developed, and I certainly haven't got that power, but I think I recognized what he had. And my method of recognition is swimming. So I'm a regular swimmer. I swim every day. And we've got a farm pond, and our farm straddles a hill. So hopefully our farm is part of the refinement of water, because in a way I think everything's about refinement. Spiritually, water is a sort of metaphor for everything. And if we can refine ourselves through swimming in vibrant, energetic water, and certainly as a swimmer, I feel that every water you ever swim in is different. You know, it's different to swim in the sea, it's different to swim in different rivers, and it's different to swim in our pond, which is a spring-fed pond on our farm, than it is to swim in somebody else's farm, which is itself interesting, because in a way our body and our powers of perception is like an instrument of water divining, so we can experience directly the quality of water and how it energizes us as a sort of human instrument. So that's a bit of a meander, but in a way, I suppose it's my personal experience of water. And what I notice, I go swimming every morning, first thing, and when you swim, especially if the water's really cold, it's incredible how it re-energizes you. And it's obvious that something is going on in an interaction between the water and one's own body. And it obviously has physical effects like, you know, kind of making the organs smaller and things like that. But it also it just changes your state. So it's a very fascinating thing. So that's my sort of personal meandering. But I suppose in my sustainable food trust role, we have become interested in measuring the impact of farming practice on water. Because in a way, if you don't measure things, they sort of don't exist, or even if they do exist and we're certain of it, we can't take that into the world and say, look what the effect of good farming is on water impacts. So we, through a project called the Global Farm Metric, and this is a sort of second more worldly bit of what I want to share, have been thinking about water, which is called natural capital in jargon terms, and how we could be rewarded for improving the various aspects of water over which we have stewardship. And this is just to share where we are at the moment, because I feel this is a project which should involve all of us, because in a way you could say that DEFRA are not at the moment measuring the outcomes of good farming practice in an adequate way. So if you click on water, which is only one set of metrics, what would we want to measure which would be a good and accurate reflection of the impact of our farming systems on water? And what we've come up with so far is it's obviously important to work out how we source our water. So do we source it from fossil water which has come from somewhere else, maybe a borehole, which is sort of ancient water, more or less ancient, or are we in our farming practice depend on current rainfall? And that, to me, is an important issue, and how much dependency we have on outside water, whether it's mains water, borehole water, or other forms of water, and whether we can actually farm within the rainfall of our own system. So that's one set of metrics, which is sort of obvious usage. And that's probably quite easy to, 2 minutes left. Okay, the second one is pollution. So that can be good or bad. So our farming practice can either improve the water quality or diminish it. And what would you measure there? Well, you'd measure pesticides, you'd measure nutrient in the water, whether it's nitrates or phosphates, and you also would want to measure biological oxygen demand, or an equivalent measure. So let's supposing every farm has a farm outfall, and we're a dairy farm, so we're very vulnerable. If we had a constant monitor of our dairy septic tank outfall, and we were responsible, and even financially responsible, for the quality of that outfall, that would be truly scary, because I'm sure we haven't always been perfect. I know we haven't always been perfect, but in a way that's what's needed. So every farm needs to measure the impact of, what Claire was talking about, the shit in a way. It's, the shit of our farm is water, or it isn't, and that's what we need to be responsible for. And then the final thing, which we haven't really explored very much yet, but I think is really important, is the energetic quality of water. So how can we measure that? And in a way, there's a parallel discussion going on with food quality now, that we're talking about nutrient density and even finer qualities. And of course, the biodynamic movement have done so much with this as well, with sensitive crystallization and these energetic pictures of food quality. So I think we need to have a measure which captures the energetic impact of the farming practice on water, finer water quality, which of course the biodynamic movement have done so much work in already. So those are my shared thoughts. But I think that what is really important, because I think the problem we have in farming at the moment is that the monetary impact of our farming systems, both for good or bad, is not properly measured or acknowledged. And if we could develop a common framework of measurement, then the farmers here and the farmers who are part of the solution could demonstrate to the public that we are delivering better water quality and better water usage and all those things. And in the end, the polluters should pay, and the people who are delivering public goods, which is what Michael Gove called them when he was at this conference all those years ago, should be rewarded for those outcomes. And that's quite a materialistic note to end on, but I think it's really important, because in the end, we can't make it work financially. We can't do what we need to do. So thank you.
Thank you, Patrick. So it's about being conscious and accountable. Nigel.
Thanks, Patrick. Yeah, so I...
the mic.
Oh, yes.
Lost it. Can you rescue it? Here he is.
Thanks, Patrick. Great. Yeah, so I'm here to talk about the Pevensey Farmers Group, which, as the slide says, we're working together for water, wildlife, and resilience. And for those of you that don't know where the Pevensey Levels is, it's sandwiched between Eastbourne and Bexhill, sort of down in East Sussex, right on the coast. So we're a very low-lying landscape of around about 10,000 acres. We're largely triple SI, so highly designated Ramsar as well. And the actual cluster was born out of the facilitation, the DEFRA-funded facilitation fund, which we actually started the agreement in 2018. So this is actually one of our winter lectures. We're a farmer-led grassroots cluster, and we basically aim to encourage better nature conservation and help farmers find a nature-friendly farming direction. So how do we do that? We do that through these winter lectures. We tend to host around about 6 of these per year, and we also do summer farm walks and field labs, that sort of thing. So one of the, possibly this is probably the species that the Pevensey Levels is most known for, the lapwing. It's an incredible bird, but sadly over the last probably 20, 30 years, we've seen huge declines in the population of successful breeding lapwing. We still get large flocks, but they're quite, they just come in and disappear. So this is, why is this happening? It's basically because of climate change. Largely, the Pevensey Levels have been drying out, and it's obviously challenging in terms of predator control as well. So obviously, this is not a great story, but we have some more encouraging stories, such as the fenroff spider, which is an incredibly rare species of spider in the UK. It actually really thrives in the ditches of the Pevensey Levels. So we try as a cluster to sort of celebrate the positive stories, and we're also been active in terms of trying to help species recover. So as this is a little story that was in the BBC News about us working together to help restore the water vole. So we basically had a presentation from Professor Tony Martin back in, I think it was 2021. And around about the same time, we actually rolled out a series of traps, remote traps, to help control sort of predator control. So we started trapping mink, basically, and that obviously has been a coordinated action amongst our group of around about 50 farmers, and that's been very successful. And actually, we're very pleased now that adjacent landscapes, High Weald and the Cookmere and other landscapes are also now rolling out remote traps to help bring the numbers of mink down, or ideally eradicate them, which will enable the water vole to recover. And I know in East Anglia, they are beginning to see really good populations of water vole recovering. So this was just a shot of one of our workshops. Oh yes, sorry. So the people down the end. Yep. This was one of our workshops back in the summer, obviously helping kind of share the knowledge with other farmers in our group. This was another really exciting project, and it was led by the Sussex Wildlife Trust. They've got quite a sizable reserve on the Pevensey levels, and actually our family farm, we're one of the graziers for this project. So they managed to receive some funding through the highways. I think it was kind of BNG money, around about £600,000, and that has been spent on re-engineering some of the landscape, basically digging scrapes, blocking ditches and holding up water. So it was a really exciting project, and it's kind of an inspiring example to other farmers in the group to sort of show what can be done to hold up water, to sort of try and re-wet the landscape, because obviously, the last few years, certainly we've seen, long, sustained droughts, and obviously quite a lot of water in the winter. And then obviously that, ends up in the sea. So what projects like this can demonstrate is that actually you can hold up water. And yeah, this is Charlotte from the Sussex Wildlife Trust. She ran a kind of workshop for our members, sort of sharing knowledge of that project, which was obviously quite exciting for our members to learn about. And this is actually a group of our store cattle back in the summer during that drought, obviously enjoying one of the new scrapes. So yeah, kind of encouraging signs to see these scrapes holding water throughout the summer months, basically. So, and yeah, going forward, obviously, I think we're trying to inspire our members in other sort of, neighbouring landscapes to basically create more scrapes to hold up water, and to create kind of an archipelago of kind of wetlands, which obviously is going to attract birds and attract more biodiversity. So. And just finally, why clusters matter. So obviously, it's really important, farmers, can be quite isolated. So actually farming clusters bring, groups of farmers together to kind of like for, social interaction, for knowledge transfer. And really this cluster has been running for nearly 7 years. The actual facilitation fund has come to an end now, but thankfully, due to one of our partners, South East Water, they've stepped in and kind of given us some short-term funding to get us through to April, to keep winter lectures going, and to keep kind of momentum going. So we're really keen to continue on, and we get really good engagement rates. We get probably between like 30 and 50 people attending our winter lectures. So it's a really positive group. And off the back of the recent Sussex Wildlife Trust project, I think other farmers are interested in getting more of these sort of landscape projects off, started. So, these clusters really are vital for farming landscapes.
Yeah.
That's it.
Thank you.
Okay.
That's great.
Great. Yeah.
And just a good piece of news, I'm reliably informed that FIPL funding will be renewed, so that gives hope for some of these projects. So yeah, it's been announced this morning over at the other conference.
Very good, thank you. It's very grand, isn't it, this room? I feel like I need to wear a gold chain, but this will have to do. Thanks for inviting me. I'm Dan Turner. I lead on land management and nature markets at the Rivers Trust. So the Rivers Trust movement is made up of over 70 independent charities across the UK and the island of Ireland, but each one is very deeply connected to its local area. But I guess what unites us all is our shared vision of wild, healthy, natural rivers valued by everyone. Rivers are at the heart of our landscapes, our communities, and our future. But they're much more than just water. They are the threads that weave our communities into land. A river catchment connects farms, villages, towns, cities. And ultimately, whatever happens upstream affects everyone downstream. And I think a very powerful example of this is in New Zealand, where Maori communities have a very deep connection to rivers. It's integral to their health and well-being and their identity. So much so they have legal frameworks in place that actually recognise rivers as legal persons. So just imagine if we valued rivers like that here in the UK, because too often we see rivers as a problem. We associate them with flooding, erosion and pollution. But that mindset really has to change. Rivers aren't a problem to fix. They are a solution waiting to be embraced. And to unlock the full potential of our rivers, we have to co-design solutions with the people that know the land best. This means listening and working with local communities, especially farmers, because long-term meaningful change can only happen when people who are most affected are involved from the start and not brought in at the end. And I should say this from a personal experience of growing up in a large mixed farm in Cumbria, where the environment was a core part of that business. I understand firsthand the pressures farmers are under, whether that's economic, regulatory, climate, but I also appreciate the incredible potential they have as stewards of the land. And that's why I believe that so strongly that real change can only happen when it's co-designed with farmers, not imposed on them. They have to be part of the solution and they deserve to be supported and valued for the role they play. But also visions for our rivers and catchments must be community-led and, importantly, place-based. I think we'll all agree that many of our previous agri-environment schemes have been a one-size-fits-all solution, and they miss, critically, the nuance, the local character, and the real needs of the people operating and managing the land. Farmers need flexible, tailored support that reflects the land that they steward and the challenges they face. And this is the kind of locally designed vision that really works. And I think this is where the Rivers Trust and its partners are making a real difference. Through the catchment-based approach, working alongside government, water companies, businesses, farmers and communities, we are laying the foundations for collective action. Because tackling the climate and biodiversity crisis, isn't just about a talking shop or good intentions. It's about joined up, strategic collaboration at scale and pace. And I think a great example of what collective action can achieve is the Wyre Natural Flood Management Project in Lancashire. This was a partnership between the Wyre Rivers Trust, one of our local rivers trusts, ourselves, the Rivers Trust, and Triodos Bank. This project pioneers a bold, innovative financing model. It's based around a locally owned social enterprise model that attracts private investment to fund nature-based solutions to reducing flooding to vulnerable communities. Farmers are at the centre of this solution. They are paid to implement interventions like leaky dams, wetlands and soil management, all of which slow the flow of water, reducing flood risk to communities downstream. But it's much more than just a transaction. It's a sustainable business model where people, local people, have ownership and agency. One that values the role of farmers, supports rural economy and delivers long-term environmental benefits for all. And I guess this has gone on to inspire projects like the Resilient Glendamachan project, which is a landscape recovery project in the Lake District funded by DEFRA. Essentially, it's a transformative agri-environment scheme, co-designed with farmers and coordinated, again, through a social enterprise model. This approach supports resilient landscapes while enabling a range of partners to share that financial responsibility. Farmers help shape those priorities, whether that's reducing flood risk, improving water quality, enhancing cultural heritage, or restoring biodiversity. And this is, it's much more than just ticking boxes. It's all about meeting the real needs of people and place. And let's not forget, this is actually a critically important catchment. This catchment provides all the drinking water for Manchester from Thirlmere. So the benefits go far beyond the farm gate. Water, and I think you'll agree here, is the currency of natural capital. And rivers, how we move the value of that through our landscapes. So to finish with, if we want to build a future where nature and people thrive together, we need to value rivers, support farmers, and act locally because rivers connect everything and everyone. I think we need to stop treating them as problems and start seeing them as solutions. Thank you.
So thank you, Dan. That's the other way around, yeah. So I do that, yeah. So thank you, Dan. You and everybody on the panel has touched on various aspects of the work that we do. And there's a lot of how in there of how we can nurture our soil, our land, our landscapes, our communities through the water that we manage on them. The question I wanted to touch on in this talk today is the why. Why is water life? What would happen if there was no water in our lives? What would happen? It's a question for all of us to think. We wouldn't be alive. And that's a question we deal with my work with the Flow Partnership across the planet, with communities, local communities across the planet, where there is severe drought or there is severe flooding. And how do you manage that water on the landscape? And I think we got some taste of that this year in the UK when there were enormous droughts. And I even remember the Apricot Centre talking to the farmer at the Apricot Centre, and he said he couldn't grow X, Y, and Z because there wasn't enough water. It was so dry. So floods and droughts are two sides of the same coin. Communities exist across the planet. Farming is what sustains us, and to have farming, to grow trees, to have a healthy soil, we all need one ingredient, and that's water. So I'm just going to show you a few examples of communities that we work with and what they've done to bring the water back in their lives. From across India, from Africa where we work, and some from the UK, and how we can do that and how that sustains us. So this is a project which we did in 2019. It is in very dry, arid Rajasthan. That's a photograph taken by a drone by us. And can that go, so dry, so arid, it sustains, yet there are people living there. And what we did by holding water up in the landscape, this is what happen. And what you can see on the right-hand corner is the Bandh, which is called a Johad in Rajasthan. And the community built that in the flow pathway of the water, and the water got held instead of flowing away. And then it infiltrates the ground, all of which my colleagues have touched on. And then this year later, this is how it supports the biodiversity, the farming. There is enough water throughout the year for the farmers, for the people, for the communities to take, to live their life. It all comes to the water cycle. This is something we studied when we were in school, when we were maybe in class 3 or class 4. And then we conveniently forget that this is the cycle on which all life depends. We forget that the water cycle and the life cycle are one. If the water cycle goes, as we see often when you have extreme storms or you have droughts, suddenly we are aware that there is something called a water cycle which is impacting our lives. So I'll quickly run through this current project that we're doing. It's more than 125 square kilometers. It's now expanded to 512 square kilometers. But these are some of the pictures were taken by me. You can see how dry it is. And we started, this is the periphery of a national park in India, the Kuno National Park, where the Prime Minister, in his wisdom, was backed a project where the big cheetahs from Namibia were being rehomed. And when they're rehomed in a forest, what happens is that you take the people living in the forest, who were the tribes, who looked after the forest, out to resettle outside the forest. But unfortunately, the land was very degraded and dry. And what happened? So we worked with the community, sorted out what needs to happen, where it'll happen, and looked at the points where water needs to come back first before the forest could regenerate. And this is a photo. We did the first year, we did the first 5 projects, and you can see what happens immediately. In May 24, that was like that, and in August 24, within 3 months, look at the change. So these were the first, these are 4 ponds. You can see that they weren't there before, and now that they're there, look at the amount of water. So the minute water comes back, life comes back. So it is intrinsically linked to our life. It's the same for India, it's the same for Africa, it's the same for the UK and across the world. This slide I put in because it also brought back livelihoods. You know, for the first, there's the community sorting out how many trees to plant. They grew tomatoes in Rajasthan, which is a water-intensive plant. And most amazingly, that's the first lot of fish they had in a pond in dry, arid Rajasthan. You can see how pleased they all look. So you have life, and it's what sustains us possible the minute water comes back. And it also deals with challenges like migration, like trafficking, children going to school. These are the metrics we look at. How long does the water flow in the river once the water is being held upstream? How many children start going to school? How many women can have a dairy industry and sit and chat with their friends instead of having to go out to collect water? Different. How do people migrate? Does it lessen the migration? How many disaster migration? So those are the metrics we look at. And when you can see the improvement in that, you can see from mud houses, brick houses start coming, there is prosperity in the village. And people say, why do we need to migrate now? No, we've got a good life here. Why would we go somewhere else? So this is quickly pictures from Africa, very similar. This is one of my most favorite projects. We've just completed this in October. A young man came with us to India to see what was, we have something called the Water Schools Initiative, very similar to the clusters that Nigel was talking about. And that is farmer to farmer sharing and learning what to do with each other. And they learned that in India, you hold so much water by building the intervention that you first saw. So he came back and he says, why can't I do that with my community? Now, the difference is, in India, you have machines. In Africa, rural Zimbabwe, they don't have machines and they dig by hand. And then he added another innovation. He said, what my farmers do, if they produce something, they have to go 25 kilometers to access the market. So if we built an intervention that held the water and also acted like a road, a bridge, what would happen? And that's what happened. So they've cut down 25 kilometers of travel for the market, for the produce to reach the market, and at the same time, hold the water. This just got completed in October this year. And you can see as the rain started coming, and it's pouring right now, the water does flow over for a while, but that's the amount of water that started getting held. And look at that. So you have, the minute water comes back, you have life. And one of the biggest examples of life and water being around, these are frogs from Zimbabwe. This slide was sent to me, one of my most favorite. They can now say, oh, we never heard that frog for many years. We can hear it now. And these are the different frogs that croak and tell them there is water in the landscape and life. So quickly, some of the ways to hold the water in Europe and in UK. These are pictures I've taken from Slovakia in an entire forest. In fact, some of them we did ourselves, holding the water back in a staggered fashion so it doesn't flood downstream. This is an iconic project, Belford in the UK. They look like they've just fallen over there, but they're actually strategically placed timbers to slow the flow of the water. And you can see the different ways to do that. One of those was in Stroud. How do you stop the water from rushing downstream and slow it so that it follows a meandering path? So we find that the strategies are the same, Slovakia, UK, leaky dams, but also across in different parts. For floods and droughts, you can have that same kind of interventions. So that's in Zimbabwe, that's to hold the water for the droughts, and you have similar to hold the water for the floods. And this slide I love, some of you might have seen it. We were having this discussion about a ditch for the future where you hold the water in staggered ways in UK. And when we went to visit Zimbabwe, they'd already been doing that for the last 4 years. So The language of water is the same. That's a book we've written, which is available in the bookshop. That's the plug. But that's about communities all holding water, and how do they do it culturally specific to their land so that their water, their life is all there. I'll leave you with the last two slides. That's my colleague Sanjay in India. This is the land of the periphery of that forest we are regenerating along with the tribes. This was taken in March 2024, and that same spot in August 2024, rehydrated. So when you hold the water, which is free natural capital, it gives you the currency of life. It gives us life. And I'll close on that. But I do want to say, Patrick, that was what you said about knowledge and experience. And knowledge we have knowledge, but we need to put that knowledge and get the experience into action so that just thinking about holding water won't do the trick. We have to hold the water. We have to plant the trees. We have to make sure that our communities have the wherewithal for life to flourish and happen. And not just in our backyards, but also across the world, because the language of water, the water is what connects us all to the planet. And if the planet is healthy, we're healthy. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, all of the specialists. That's really great. And I'd now like to open it up to questions. If you can either speak out very clearly or use your under-desk mic, that would be really good. And if you know who you want to ask a question to, ask it directly to a person. Otherwise, I will choose one of the panel to answer you. So, yes.
Thank you. That was fantastic. Thank you so much. This isn't targeted at anyone in the room can answer the question, then that'd be great. It's about beavers. There are loads of beavers in Somerset. Does anyone have experience of beavers coming to seasonal watercourses and effectively turning them back into almost permanent watercourses? Because I fear that we may never get beavers because our water always dries up.
I don't think we have a specialist on that, but I think...
I can attempt.
You can? Yeah?
So, for a while, beavers were kept in protected enclosures, and I think it was just last year that beavers were spotted in the wild. So, beavers coming to, permanent watercourses was not actually allowed. But there are some really good projects, especially one near Exeter, the beaver project over there. If you go to it, you'll see what they converted from a completely dry, bare field, and the beavers were let loose, and there you go. You have a permanent watercourse. The same in Cornwall. So while at the moment they're contained, but I think over a period of time now, beavers are beginning to be allowed to flourish in the wild, and you have them arriving at, converting spaces into permanent watercourses.
And the Beaver Trust has a document called Getting Your Land Ready for Beavers or something like that. So there is information out there. So good luck with it.
Oh, and they're here today as well. They're in there. Yeah.
The Beavers Trust?
Yeah.
Not the beavers?
No, well.
Beavers sleep in the day.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you. My name's Henry Lewson-Gore. I'm a practicing ecological economist and recent escapee from DEFRA. I'm very interested in the whole nature, food, economics, and one of the things I was wanting some views on is the issue of supply chain power dynamics, in that I think everyone's aware, farmer, of the problems of the power dynamics in the food supply chain. Well, effectively, what's developing here potentially is a new supply chain around ecological services, where farmers are actually providing services. And I think one of the key issues is how we avoid the sort of power inequalities, how we have organisation legal structures that create fairer relationships between the people who get the benefits of these ecosystem services and the farmers and supply chain who provide them. And so I was interested in what views people maybe had on how to set up these supply chains in a way that doesn't replicate all the problems we have with the food supply chain.
Thank you, Henry. Patrick.
Well, I think what you're bringing up is really important. I think what we have at the moment is a sort of combination between silos and the Wild West in terms of rewarding public money for public goods. And one of the projects that I've been involved with is called, well, it's one of the manifestations of it was a thing called the Sustainable Markets Initiative, which actually the King set up when he was the Prince of Wales back in the day. But basically the idea was to bring all the people who could fund public goods outcomes to work together. So it wasn't just a question of you were getting, money from a water company for flood restoration or reducing nutrient pollution, but it was also rewarding all the other public good outcomes that you had. And I was just I just wanted to read a list of the things that if we measured our water with a common framework which everybody agreed was fair, then we would be we could be rewarded financially for the public goods that we deliver. And who would reward those? It could be governments and their agencies, obviously, but it also could be hypothecated taxes, and it could be like the NHS. If we're getting better water free of pesticides, the NHS could contribute through that if the Treasury agreed with that. Water companies themselves, obviously. Food companies and retailers, that's a discussion of how they would reward farmers who are delivering better water quality outcomes. Councils, conservation charities, banks, philanthropy, fund managers. But we don't want it all to be just chaotic, because that makes farmers much more vulnerable to be exploited. So I think by common measurement, with all farmers having a sustainability audit, that puts the power back in the hands of the farmers, and I think that's what we need.
Absolutely. And I'd like to say that the water companies are funding some work, and we're all set to benefit from the water companies having less cleaning up to do.
Exactly.
For us to get better water as well, because the chemicals that are coming through are supposedly drinkable water these days, not healthy really in the long term. And if we can help improve that, then we help their profits, and we have to be vigilant that it doesn't all go in their profits, but also goes into the water consumers' pocket through lower water costs. So thank you. Lots of people want to talk. We've got 20 minutes left. That's really good that we've still got 20 minutes.
Good.
Claire.
Thanks. So on the other side of that is who's causing the pollution. And so you may be farming in a way that is taking pollution out of water, but you may also be farming in a way that's adding it in. And that's to penalise that, the polluter pays model is contentious and difficult. Could you?
I'll just say something brief, people have got to say. I think it's key.
Yeah.
And why won't governments introduce the polluter pays principle into agriculture? Basically because it would put up the price of food, and they're not feeling the heat from the public. So I think if enough of us lobbied the government saying it's completely wrong, the absence of the application of the polluter pays principle in agriculture, and they thought it was a voting issue, then maybe they would do that. But I think at the moment, if Keir Starmer is looking around thinking what's an issue that's going to swing votes, he doesn't think this is an issue, and that's our problem. We have to make it a political issue.
So this is one of our roles as consumers, make those that we voted for aware of what are important issues. So, this gentleman here.
Hi, I'm Paul. I'm a guardian of the river Roding, and it's interesting you mentioned in your presentation about the Wanganui River and the idea of rights of nature and river guardianship. The joyful news is it's already a reality. I can see another one in the room over there. There is a growing grassroots movement of now hundreds of river guardians who are putting that approach into practice. It's related to, but slightly different from the catchment partnership and more project-based approach. It's actually holding the river as in some way sacred and acting for it in all things. The slight issue at the moment, we don't have enough landowners and farmers who are coming forward as guardians. So if anyone here wants to step into that role of guardianship rather than ownership, that would be amazing if you own a river or land. But from an institutional point of view, has the Rivers Trust engaged with that movement at all yet? And if not, could you put some of your funding and heft and all that things you have behind it, because it's a volunteer movement that I think is really struggling to do the amount of work that is being imposed upon us to speak for and act for our rivers that we love.
I can certainly take that back in the
So please get
absolutely, yeah. It sounds like a great.
presentation, please also.
No, absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, so in our consciousness, we can all become river guardians, and we can all support talking to our MPs about the polluter pays. And that's not just farmers, that's any of us. We should all be using completely biologically degradable products in our houses. We shouldn't be using forever chemicals. We can all become responsible, and we can all push that not only the farming industry, but all the other industries have to be more responsible too.
I might just pick up on the pollutant pays. I think we are realistically, we're quite far away from that. I think we don't have regulatory baseline for farmers that is, regulated properly. We don't take a systems approach to all of things. We have a huge amount of missed opportunity. There's so much overlap, and that's why I'm a massive advocate for actually looking at the role of devolution and how that can actually give local powers to local decision making. I think we have we have massive challenge around water governance. And I think the Cunliffe review has kind of highlighted that, and I think there is a huge opportunity there to really make change at a local level. And for me, the obvious route seems like devolution.
Right, this gentleman, then the man in the check shirt, and then the gentleman over there.
Thank you. Luke Park from the Cambridgeshire Bent, Vice Chairman of Feather and Soil. We're at the present second mapping all of our levels down there in terms of water quality and also water storage capacity. We've had grants from government to help us do that, and we are a farm-led organisation. The one thing that we hit upon time and time again is actually the ownership of water. There is such a massive disconnect in the legislative approach. You can have, the water might be in the ditch, but it's not your water if you haven't got a licence to use it. Your next door neighbour might have that licence to use it, but it will then drain your field of water. So there needs to be a huge change in how we operate water in this country.
Thank you. That's a really good point, raising that consciousness. Who owns water and how do we manage it? Because also some farmers have extraction rights, and then they set up their farming depending on that. And then when we have a drought like last year, what happens if they have no water? Or what happens if they're taking too much water for the local environment? And what we are, through various extraction systems, taking away some of our traditional ancestral water that is deep in the ground, and we are not sufficiently conscious of that either. Gentleman in check shirt.
Thank you. I'm Giles Strother. I work as a landlord farm advisor for the local wildlife trust. Part of that job is running a river catchment partnership with support from the Rivers Trust. And this might sound quite specific, but it's a problem that arises quite often to me. We very much favour the farmer-led approach where possible. We work with the local farmer clusters, and that can sometimes lead to great opportunities when you meet someone enthusiastic. But generally, the situation is the other way around, really. We're perhaps working with a village where they're getting flooding problems, and we can see great opportunities in the catchment upstream for leaky dams or other sort of natural flood management. But unless you can get through to the critical landowner, then you can't do anything. So what will happen, and this happens quite often, is you just go polite, but for no thanks, I'm not interested. And at that point, there's nowhere to go. There is plenty of funding to pay for capital works, but generally it doesn't go beyond that. So there's no carrot really, and there's also no stick.
Yeah.
So we're left with a situation, nobody can solve the problem, funding's there to do it, but we've got someone that doesn't, just not interested. Any tips for Rivers Trust or any panel on how we might unblock those blockages?
Go on.
Yeah, it's a really interesting question. I think facilitation groups and farm cluster groups are a really good mechanism for that. Start that conversation early. Obviously, that's been a big challenge to fund facilitation groups outside of DEFRA funding. There is definitely conversations at the moment at government level looking at how that looks locally, which is quite interesting. And I think it can really kind of unlock that. But I think what we really need to do is bring those kind of communities together. I think we still are very guilty of a them and us culture, especially with the environment movement and farming. It's still seen as farming and the environment, whereas actually they're one of the same things. So we've got to build those relationships and try and bring those communities together. So I think, actually using like yourselves, the facilitation groups, and getting local communities involved in those discussions is we're all people at the end of the day. And all of this really, you can talk about big environmental project. At the end of the day, this is a whole social exercise, isn't it? It's about people at the end of the day.
Exactly. It's about people, it's about community, and it's also about us really penetrating the issue and trying to find out how we can present it as something that will benefit the landowner as well, make it worth her while to become engaged and to work with the community, and if possible, get the community engaged in the reality of it, not just the please do it, but maybe also moving logs, whatever one can, so that everybody feels there's something in it for me and we're working in it together. It's not easy, but it's worth it. And I said this gentleman over there.
Thank you.
And you next.
My name is Kit from Growing Farm. We are regenerating. Okay. We're regenerating 18 acres of arable field that's been glyphosated, fertilizer, and farmed conventionally over 25 years. My question is really a more sort of granular thing, which is how do I retain water? I'm going to be installing 10 cubic meters of IBC containers for the barn we're just going to build. I know that is a tiny amount of the amount that I can store in the ground. But how do I quantify? How do I make the argument of that storage? And do I go down annually mold plowing it and trashing the soil? Or do I try to do a countryside stewardship swale that is like a tank trap for a tractor to go across? Or is my solution, which is to put a mini swale that is about the height and depth of the rainwater erosion gullies that I've already got, the way to go? Where do I go? Is your book the book that will tell me how to go? I mean, I have tried looking at Google, sort of taking Google to bed with me, and all I can get is contour line plowing annually and everything's solved. I don't think it is. So a little bit of wisdom from you, the panel, and the collective audience would be great.
Thank you. It's a very good question. When you start out, there are so many. Like this gives you different methods in different communities, different parts of the world. Some are the same, some are slightly different. They're culturally specific. But the most important thing to remember is it's specific to your land. The contours of your land. And so what you do for water holding, you probably need to get a hydrologist to come in with you to see the flow of the water on your land. Where does the water flow to? Where does it pool? Where is it naturally pooling? That's where you cite what you do. Is it hilly? Is it flat? Those are the kind of, well, I can't answer the specifics of your question, but I can tell you that you really do need a hydrologist who will be able to walk the land with you and tell you these are the kind of places that you can put a leaky dam, or you can put, one of those things that you showed where the cows were,
Scrape.
What is your land wanting? Not what you want to put, but what your land needs, and you need to bring some expertise. And you will not look back. Once you've done that right kind of citing the right kind of structure, then your land will thank you for it, because you've collected the water that's falling in the right places. So I would say read my book for sure. But to get a local hydrologist in and really walk it thoroughly and then decide what you need to do. And you will find the answer there.
Could I
Yeah,
say something here in terms of...
Yeah, we can go a bit all over the place as well. If you're looking for books, there's a book on the biodynamic stand about Seacombe, who started a farm literally in the desert. There are lessons there to be learned about penetrating the detail, appreciating the drop of water, and finding a way of working with it. There are also some very good examples of work done in Portugal through the Permaculture Association and their approach. But I'll go to a couple of audience members who want to answer your question too. This gentleman there, and then this lady here.
I am the soil and environmental scientist, recently retired from Newcastle University School of Agriculture, Food and Rural Development.
Speak up.
What I didn't quite understand was we were talking about what sounded to be like land degradation, long period of intensive agriculture, and we're wanting to get more water into the soil and store. And hydrologists will help you, but soil scientists will also help you in the sense that regenerating your topsoil structure, which, that really is perhaps changing very dramatically how you might have treated or whoever had the farm before was treating it. You've got to get organic matter in, you've got to change structure, get life back into the soil. So, once you do that, then water will again get down. Because I see, and it relates to the question I was going to ask, I see this in Northumberland, where I come from. My wife and I are now involved in a group called the Coquet River Action Group, which is a community action, 9 groups throughout the catchment trying to improve the quality of water in the river. And what I've seen on our stream, which runs through our land, is that water comes from a variety of the pollution or the problem comes from a variety of sources. It comes, and this directly relates to you, I suppose, it comes particularly from intensive arable land under autumn sown cereals or rape, which has been that way for 15 years. And we see gullies eating back on our slopes where we planted woodland, relating to these arable fields that have been compacted and are almost dead. Now, I don't know if that's your problem or not, but that's our problem, communicating with those intensive agribusiness large farmers. And that relates to everything that's been talked about here. How do we get this across to people who have invested in intensive agriculture and have invested in large machines, don't have livestock anymore? It's difficult, but to your problem straight away, maybe soil management as well as hydrology, improving water access.
Yeah, I think you've got lots of people you can chat to because there are lots of different things that can be done, and it's about working out what's the priority for your land. But I said this lady could speak.
I'm Rosa Pearson from West Oxfordshire. Sorry, this isn't related to that, but it is a new question, but it's one that was triggered by the previous conversation.
Right.
And it's sort of a bit of a technical one, and I don't know if anyone's going to be able to answer it, but what sort of scale are we talking about really in how much? I mean, can our land actually become our reservoir? Can we abolish artificial reservoirs? Are we talking about a capacity for so much water storage with presumably slightly better human uses and slightly more economical human uses of water, with more rainwater harvesting, etc., and less wastage of flushing all the water down the loo and all that? Are we talking about a world in which we do not need any artificial reservoirs, even given human civilization?
Dan says he can answer it.
Well, I can't answer it, but I think the reality is we need every single thing in our toolkit to tackle what we are probably going to face in the next 10 years. So that is, we need integrated solutions. We need hard engineered solutions. We also need nature-based solutions, but we've all got to work actively together to look at that, solution. I don't think there's going to be a world where we don't need reservoirs. If you come up to the Lake District and have a look at some of the reservoirs in the Lake District. I remember, if you've all read Lee Schofield's book about Hawes water, in that book he said this this reservoir, you can see the remains of the village once every 5 years. Since he's written that book, you can see those remains every single year. We need every single tool in our toolkit to be able to tackle our future.
And as long as urban populations continue to increase, we are going to need man-made reservoirs to meet those clusters. If we were all spread out at a reasonable level through the countryside, it would be different. We could have different solutions. But as Dan says, we need every solution, I think, going forward.
But I do think we do need to question why we think it's a good idea to have a huge amount of data centres in the Oxford, Cambridge, London triangle, when actually London is in the top 10 most water-threatened, stressed cities in the world. That this is real. So we need to, and I think one thing is we desperately need this land use framework, and we desperately need to look at how we look at this as an integrated system.
Right. I think we're going to leave the questions there. I know lots of people had questions, and you can come up afterwards and talk to us individually, but I'd just like to ask each member of the panel to say a few words, because we've only got a couple of minutes left. Simon, would you like to say a few words?
I would like to tell you that the forum on subtle technologies with agroecologists is in St Aldate's room in the town centre, not in St Aldate's tavern.
St Aldate's in the town hall, it's just across there.
Yeah. But no, I don't have anything to comment otherwise.
Thank you very much. Minnie?
All I want to say is that the statistics are 41% of the planet is now beyond tipping point. It's arid and increasing, and that's a statistic that came out last year by the UN. So think local and think global. The more water there is on our planet, you can do what you can do locally, what you can do regionally, what you can do globally, all count.
Nigel.
I just wanted to add, so obviously the funding for the Facilitation Fund has now finished. So actually for new groups looking to set up, there is no funding, government funding out there. So I would just urge DEFRA to look again, and hopefully maybe there is something in the works for that. But it's really vital funding just to kind of keep, well, either start new groups or keep existing groups going, because without, water companies stepping in, and there's no longevity of that, certainly for our group. So as of April, we could completely fold. So I think it's really important to champion that cause. So that's it for me.
If you're looking to start a water cluster group, don't hesitate to ask. Ask local big business, ask your county council, ask FIPL, ask Esme Fairburn, ask anyone you can, as well as finding out what DEFRA can offer, because we need to all work together. Water is essential for life, and we need to care for it. So the more people work in clusters, as described by Nigel, bringing people's awareness together about what we can do and what we can help and what we can make better. It's essential that we all put our efforts into it. Dan, do you want to say something more?
I would just say we've got to continue to try and bridge the gap between conservation and farming, and work closer together, I think, is a key thing.
Absolutely. Patrick?
Plug for something that's not on the programme for everyone who's interested in purifying the water in their own bodies. Come to Evensong, Christchurch Cathedral, 6 o'clock this evening if you want to bathe yourself in sacred music.
So thank you all for coming. That's really great. And keep the discussion around water going. Not just the discussion, but actions as well.
Thank you, Gabriel.
Thank you, Gabriel.
Very good.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah, you can try. It can be very quick. Amber wants a picture.
Oh, yes, cool.
Yeah.
Great session, Gabriel.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Quick, Amber.
Well done for getting it sorted.
Simon, Amber wants a picture of us together.